Hey veterans, wanted to do a quick video today to talk a little bit about some of the basics of VA service connection. Now, I know that often VA claims can be really confusing and intimidating. It seems like the rules are set up to make it harder for us. But in reality, the rules are simpler than you might think. And the one thing that you have on your side as a veteran who's struggling to get recognition for your disabilities from service is the truth, and you've got the law on your side. Even though sometimes the way it's implemented may not seem like it. So I want to talk a little bit about the things you need to prove a VA service connection claim. So there are three main things that you need. And this is aside from eligibility, like you have to be a veteran, for instance, and we can talk in another video about what exactly counts for VA purposes. But here we're going to talk about, assuming you're otherwise eligible, then there are three things you need. One is a current condition. It's a current diagnosed disability, or in some cases an undiagnosed condition, but one that is that is defined. So that could be something as simple as diabetes, or you have the arthritis in your right ankle. Those are current conditions, and it has to be ongoing today, or as a chronic issue for VA to pay disability for it. I want to give a couple of examples of things that would not be a current condition. So you, for instance, broke your arm while in the Army, and it's 5 years later today, and your arm's not broken anymore. That's what it is. It's not a current disability. Now, you could have residuals from that. You might, for instance, have a reduced range of motion because of the damage that was caused when you broke your arm, or you might currently have traumatic arthritis because of it. Those are current conditions, but the original broken arm is not. Another example of something that is not a current condition is Agent Orange exposure, or exposure to oil well fires. Those are exposures, and they can cause a condition, but they're not considered a disability. And that's a mistake I think sometimes people make when they're filing their claims when they've just gotten out of the military, is they list all the things they were exposed to. And by people, I mean me, I did this. But they didn't necessarily talk about what problems it caused. Okay, so let's talk about the event in service. That's the second piece that you need to prove your claim. Something had to have happened to have caused your current disability. So the example I used earlier, you broke your arm in service, and today you have traumatic arthritis because of it. You were involved in a explosion that caused a traumatic brain injury, and you have current residuals of that traumatic brain injury. Another good example would be you were exposed to chemical weapons or other issues while serving in the Gulf War, and you currently have irritable bowel syndrome, or an undiagnosed cluster of illnesses that arose out of your service in the Gulf. So the event in service would be the thing that happened or that you were exposed to. And those didn't necessarily have to be combat related or deployment related. It could be something that happened while you lived in the barracks. You tripped and fell and fractured your skull, or you were exposed to a traumatic incident, a sexual assault, or something terrible happened to someone you knew in the military and you were a witness, or for that matter, there are things that you wouldn't think of as being related to military service. Because if you were on active duty and you had something that occurred to you and it was not due to willful misconduct, then that counts. So you were on leave after you've been in the Army for a year, you go home for 2 weeks, and you get in a car accident while you're at home. That is an event in service, and it counts. Again, as long as it wasn't as a result of willful misconduct. So the third thing is the connection or nexus between those two things. So a nexus is basically a fancy term for a medical link between the current condition and the event in service. So that nexus could be provided by a medical doctor. You could have your current practitioner could say that they believe it is more likely than not, and those are kind of the key words, that it's more likely than not that your current condition of whatever was caused by the event in service. You don't always have to have a doctor's opinion causing that. If the diagnosis took place while you were on active duty, and there's no evidence that it was caused by something prior to your service, then the nexus is established because it was diagnosed while you were on active duty. A nexus can be presumed in some cases. A good example for that would be a Vietnam veteran who has prostate cancer. If they served in Vietnam, then it's presumed they were exposed to Agent Orange, and the nexus is provided by that presumption because it's well known that prostate cancer can be caused by exposure to dioxin. And so you don't always have to go out and get a doctor or something like that to provide this. Now, if you don't have the presumption and it didn't get diagnosed while you were on active duty, then the nexus is a little trickier. And here, where it comes into play is you can provide that nexus yourself by having a medical doctor or other medical professional provide it, or VA can provide it through a compensation and pension exam. That can be a mixed bag. Over the last few years, VA has increasingly contracted that service out. You no longer go to VA doctors for CMP exams, or very rarely. Now they're usually conducted by outside contractors. There's a couple of big companies that do this. LHI and QTC and VES are all three companies that you might have heard from, or you might hear from if you're going to file a claim. Those big companies take these multi-billion-dollar contracts from VA, and they in turn contract out to individual doctors and nurse practitioners and other medical professionals all over the country who do these exams. Sometimes they can be really solid exams where they'll bring you in and they'll do a thorough review of your records, and they'll ask you all kinds of questions and do a thorough exam, and then they write a well-informed medical opinion that reflects the reality. Sometimes that's not what happens. It's not uncommon to find yourself getting called into some place that looks a little sketchy, and they're running through veterans every 15 minutes trying to just collect lots of checks from the government for this service. And it's important when you go to these exams that you take notes about what happened. How thorough was the doctor? What occurred? Did they take all the questions? What kind of measurements did they take? Did they actually conduct an exam or just ask you questions? Where that comes into play is if you have to appeal because they did not give a thorough exam and you didn't get service connected, then you'll have, that'll be part of your grounds for your appeal, will be what's called an inadequate exam. So those are the three things. It's the current diagnosed disability, the event in service, and the connection between the two. Where it's going to get tricky is when VA makes a mistake, when you have a bad exam, when they don't follow their own rules, things like that. And those are the cases where often you need to end up getting an accredited agent or an attorney involved to help fix things. I do want to tell you that I'm open to questions. Feel free to reach out. You can go to my website and I will do case evaluations. I primarily work appeals, but I do some new claims also. The main difference is that the new claims are free. The appeals, I charge a percentage of the back award, and that's standard within what VA allows. The phone number to call for a case evaluation is 800-898-1043, and you can go to my website, veteransclaimsagent.com, and feel free to ask any questions.